Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Karen demands I cook on Easter. After that, my landlord asked me to take care of his kids. And after that, am I the jerk for screwing my fence panels in so they can't be lifted? Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen doesn't get to make someone else cook on Easter. But I was really looking forward to your ham, Reddit boy. You make the best ham. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Karen demands I cook on Easter. I, 30 female, am married to my husband Mike, who's 32. Mike usually does all of the cooking and it works for us. Sometimes I cook as well, but it's very few and far between. Mike's family likes to have potlucks where the women all bring different dishes. I am a good cook, but I don't enjoy it. So we've always just said that I can't cook. We've been married for 3 years, and this hasn't been an issue. Mike and I have a daughter who's 5. She mentioned to my sister-in-law how mommy makes the best seafood casserole while trying my sister-in-law's. My sister-in-law mentioned something about the comment to my husband, and he explained how I just don't enjoy cooking, so I don't do it often and don't want to cook for family parties. My sister-in-law told my mother-in-law, and all the women in Mike's family have been texting me saying I'm selfish for letting them do all of the work at family parties. So I said I don't enjoy cooking and will not be cooking for any family parties. We all went back and forth a few times, so I said the next family party, Easter this weekend, my daughter and I will not be attending then. My mother-in-law said I'm the jerk for not allowing my daughter to attend, saying it's manipulative and that I should just make the dish and suck it up like everyone else. My husband said he's staying out of it right now, but that he understands my position. He said maybe just make a dish one time to have peace on Easter, and I refused. So, am I the jerk for pretending I couldn't cook for all of these years, and for not allowing my daughter to attend Easter? Edits for clarification. 1. My daughter will still spend Easter with my family, just not my husband's. 2. He can't take her alone because he's on call for work that weekend. 3. We did try buying store-bought once, and it was never served on purpose. 4. Mike doesn't cook for these events because it's time-consuming making a dish large enough and he works a lot. Making a meal for our family doesn't take nearly as much time since there's only 2 adults and 1 kid. Update. Mike and I have talked about this weekend. He reached out to his mom and let her know we will not be attending if I have to cook anything. I don't know what happened during their conversation that made him so upset, but his mom has since retracted her statement and said it's fine, they just want to see their grandchild. Mike let them know that since this was the hill they wanted to die on, that he will also not be attending Easter and that we will not be attending as a family unless the women in his family apologize for attacking me. We will be spending the full day of Easter with my family, which my daughter is happy to spend the day with her cousins. Mike said we will not be attending another of his family's parties unless I'm 100% comfortable, and if any comments or remarks are made, we will be leaving and not returning. Why can't your husband make a dish to bring to these potlucks? 1 dish per family isn't unusual for a potluck. Why can't your husband just make and bring something? Is there some curse placed upon his family that food made not from the hands of a bewombed person upon the holy day of Easter is not allowed or something? Not the jerk. They have no right to demand you cook anything. My husband's family tried to pull the same crap on me, but I made it clear early on that I wouldn't have it. Do I know how to cook? Sure, but we still do Grubhub and Uber Eats most nights a week because I hate cooking. Honestly, I don't blame you for not attending or letting your daughter attend. If he wants to attend this crap, tell him to go ahead, but you won't be there for it or allow your daughter to be there either. My landlord asked me to take care of his kids. I, 25 female, live in a large city and stay in a family's basement for over $1,300 a month. They've been nice, but we don't really talk at all, which is fine with me. I moved in around February, and I mostly keep to myself and just go to work. My landlord, 50s male, told me they would be leaving to go out of the country because his parent was in a critical condition. He took his entire family with him, which is his wife and kids. They asked me to look out for packages and stuff while they're gone, which is not a big deal, so I said okay and to have a safe flight, etc. A week later, today, he texts me and says his kids would be coming back, but not him about a week from now. He asked me to take his kids to school until he gets back. I don't know when exactly that is. The reason I think I might be the jerk is because I think it's an insane request to ask a tenant that just lives here, and I don't know if they have any other family here. But I also know we live in a high cost of living area, and this house is probably worth more than I could ever afford, so I don't see why it's my responsibility to take care of my landlord's kids. He could probably pay for a rideshare service or something else. For reference, the kids are at least 17, I believe. My mom says I'm a jerk for not being helpful and that it's selfish. I have a job that I can work from home and maybe have time to take them. I start about an hour after I would take them to school. I haven't called him about it yet because I feel bad, but like I said, I have a full-time job and live in a big city. If I want to go into the office or am required to go for anything, I had already made plans to go into the office next week for something I have to do. For example, I don't have time to take them because it takes over an hour to get there. I genuinely think it's an insane thing to ask a random tenant to do without consideration of my job or my life. He just said, "I won't be coming back, and I need you to take my kids to school for an undisclosed amount of time." Granted, I have not called him yet to hear more, and the circumstances are out of his control, so I don't know if I'm the jerk and I should just take his kids to school. Not the jerk. Totally weird, and I wonder if he'd have made this ridiculous request if you were 25 male. I would just say no. But if you are inclined to do this for him, don't do it for free. Calculate a daily rate for this service that you are happy with, then add a decent additional amount on for the last-minute nature of the request, and make him agree in writing that it will come off of your next month's rent before you lift a finger. Not the jerk. That's definitely a ridiculous request. You're not a house sitter or a nanny. You're paying them for housing. They are not paying you for childcare. Looking out for packages is one thing, but being responsible for someone's kids? That's a huge responsibility and not something a landlord should ask of a tenant at all, honestly, but especially without offering compensation. He should have called you to ask and offered compensation in return for you taking his kids to and from school. Sending a text basically just telling you that this is happening is super weird. It's tricky since you live there and you definitely don't want to get on the family's bad side, but you are 100% okay to refuse this request and to think it's a crazy thing to ask. Am I the jerk for screwing my fence panels in so they can't be lifted? I've lived in my house for almost 3 years. I live on a corner house next to the road, a back road. A lot of the kids in the neighborhood play ball games in that area. This doesn't bother me much, apart from when they kick it against my fence. One thing that does bug me is how often they would come to the door because their ball had gone over into my garden. I know this seems like such a small thing, but I'm talking about 5 or 6 times a day. I used to work from home, so I would just go get the ball and ask them to be more careful. However, I recently changed jobs, and now I work out of the house. My partner is still home throughout the day, but is hard of hearing and never hears the kids when they knock. She actually uses more sign language than anything, or reads lips, as she really can't hear well at all without her hearing aid, which she only really wears when she's leaving the house. Anyway, since I haven't been home to answer the door, I found out the kids have actually been lifting my fence panel and coming into my garden to get their balls. I hate this. It makes me feel like my space and privacy is violated. I also have 4 dogs who are using outside when the weather is nice. I have cameras, so I've caught them doing this, and I have evidence, but their parents don't even seem to care. So I decided to screw all of my fence panels in so they could no longer be lifted up. Now every night I go home, I'm greeted with a bunch of angry kids telling me their ball is in my garden and they can't get it. I just ignore them and throw the ball over without speaking to them. Yesterday when I got home, one of the kids' mothers was at my front door. When I got out of my car, she instantly started yelling and calling me a thief for not getting her son's ball. I told her I was at work and she started yelling about how my partner could have sorted it out. I told her I'd go get the ball, so calm down, and she said I needed to fix my fence as it was broken and the kids couldn't get them on their own anymore. I told her it wasn't broken and I had done this so that they couldn't get in. This made her very angry and she started yelling. I told her I couldn't have them letting my dogs out and also mentioned how they almost broke my fence once, and she threatened to call the police for theft the next time I don't get the ball immediately. So, am I the jerk for stopping them from getting into my garden? And could they actually call the police when I'm not even home to get the ball? Update. After reading through some of the responses, I decided to take action. I looked through my camera footage and found all of the times they had entered my garden or kicked their ball over in the last few months, and actually found one from January where they had actually come in and opened my rabbit cage up to find the rabbit. Luckily, my rabbit wasn't out there as it was winter. Following this, I went to the woman's house and met her husband. I explained what had happened, and although he wasn't yelling like his wife, he didn't seem to care. So I explained I had evidence of his son trespassing on my property, damaging my property, and evidence of potential theft, since he was opening my rabbit cage and pulling on my shed door. At first, he tried to laugh me off, but then I pulled up one of the videos on my phone and told him I was reporting this to the police. He stopped laughing and started apologizing, said he would speak to both his wife and his son and to please not involve the police. I politely thanked him and left. On my way home, I ran into one of the other parents and filled her in on what was going on. She immediately apologizes for her son's involvement. Her son had never entered my property, but he has helped lift the fence and kick the ball. She assured me he would be grounded and have his footballs taken away, and told me that if they ever do it again, I should pop the balls. I did call the non-emergency number and got it all logged and the video sent, and the kind lady on the phone informed me if it ever happens again, I can call and press charges. I can actually press charges now, but she advised me to wait, as they will only get a warning, as this is the first time that it's been logged. This also means if they do call to complain about the theft, they will be informed of the logs against them rather than any action against me. I have also informed my insurance company, who assured me since it's logged with the police and I have screwed my fences in, that I'm in the clear, but they also recommend I get a no trespassing sign, so I will do that this weekend. Thank you so much for all of your help and advice. I admit I had absolutely no idea what to do about it or if I even had a stand legally, so thank you for all of the info that you provided. Not the jerk. You should laugh at the mom and tell her to go ahead and call the police. You will be very happy to have them stop by to explain the situation. If they come out and find that you're being accused of stealing when kids are throwing or kicking balls into your yard when you're not home and having to do without them for a few hours, they're going to be very upset with her for wasting their time. He went Pikachu wow face when I asked if he could read. I used to be a DSD vendor, which in the US is someone who goes to stores like supermarkets and stocks a very specific name brand of product from stock in the back, and then leaves to go to the next store, repeat. We're often employed directly by the name brand, not by the store itself, so I have loads of I don't work here lady stories, but a few of them are real special. Chances are, if you're someone stalking a name brand of snack cakes, chips, soda, beer, or whatever, you're actually looking at a DSD vendor. I was doing my usual thing stalking my brand and went to part of Walmart's racetrack, which is the main walkway in front of a department. A dude I would shortly discover was as dumb as a bag of hammers comes up to me, completely ignoring my hat with a logo, shirt with logo, cart with logo, not a store cart, literally a my brand cart, 30 odd boxes with the logo and armloads of logo product, and asks me where something that's not my brand is that's typically in the frozen section. Me. I think those are usually in the frozen section. Jerk. Which aisle are those on then? Me. Keep going down that way until you get to the freezer section and then look there. I pointed to the area of the store where the freezers are very obviously to anyone with half a brain. Jerk walks one aisle down. I don't see them. Me. The freezer section is about 7 aisles down. Keep going until you get to the freezer section. Jerk walks one more aisle down. Where? Me. Keep going a long way down. You'll see the freezers. Jerk moves one more aisle down. I can't see it. Keep going. Look for the freezers. Jerk then moves one more aisle down. Where? Exasperated with his incompetence, I set my logo stuff down and walk over to him, fully intending to say something to the effect of, "Can you not see the signs above the aisles?" But instead, what came out was a stumbling over slightly yelling, "Me, can you read?" It's now Jerk's turn to be exasperated, and he turns to me and looks at me completely incredulously with furrowed brow, mouth hanging open, in perfect Pikachu expression as if to say, "Did I hear you literally say that to me right now?" using facial expressions alone. I just turned back towards my cart and mumbled out, "I don't work for this store," and got back to my stuff. I really had actually fully intended to say something else after that, but just the question's silliness on its own gave me pause to laugh internally about what the next word should be. I didn't see where Jerk ran off to after that, and on my way out, I told a manager for the supermarket and how I accidentally asked him if he could read, and she said not to worry about it. And she said, I literally want to say that same thing every single day. I'm glad at least someone did. And that if it ever came back around as feedback against me, she would shut it down. Good times. Not going to give me a meal benefit? I'll eat at the office then. Some backstory from a few years back. I was working on healthcare as an HTA nurse, which around here is a nurse which travels around the city area doing health assessments which don't require 112 calls, 911, which is reserved for emergency and paramedics whom handle those cases. My job was essentially picking up the jobs which do not require immediate response and trying to treat the patient either at home or, if not possible, give instructions where they can get treatment for whatever was the ailment at the time. It was a job to assist people so that they wouldn't come to the ER with small injuries or illnesses, which can be handled in the regular healthcare center next working day. Also, other part was to go around and treat patients which had, for example, IV treatments regularly and administer the fluid treatment, drugs, painkillers, ABs, etc. My issue was that I noticed that as we drove around large area from one patient to another, we had to stop for a lunch at some point, and that we had to pay for lunch from our own pocket, whatever it cost. This is common practice. For example, paramedics. They eat when they can, and usually at some gas station, or somewhere where they currently are and have time to eat. I usually read the contracts pretty carefully, which came from my previous career as an engineer, where I had to make foolproof contracts and avoid stepping on traps, and our healthcare union had negotiated that if your work requires X amount of traveling, you should be entitled for tax-free meal benefit. I wasn't completely sure about it, if that particular statement would apply for the job I was doing, but I decided to ask stupid questions about it and eventually forced my supervisor to contact the management to get a statement for the issue at hand. From the management, it went to the legal department, and they began to delve into it, and it lasted for weeks since they couldn't quite deny it outright, but they eventually came to a conclusion that it couldn't be applied to the job that I had. I was a little annoyed at this, but decided not to contest it any more than that. But another statement which union had negotiated for us was that if we have an office or a station and social space where you warm up your meal, microwave, coffee maker, etc., we're entitled to have lunch break of 30 minutes per day at the regular office where I leave every morning. Just a normal thing, which, if backed by law as well around here, lunch is holier than holy if one can say so. I mentioned earlier that our area was rather large, so if I was working on northern parts, for example, it could take 2 hours to drive there, spend 4 hours with patients around that area, and then drive back to the station, an 8-hour shift. So I agreed with the bosses that I drop the issue with the meal benefit and will eat at the office instead, and they agreed on this, and I got it in writing email that I could do that. So not every day, but a few times a week when I was assigned to some faraway area, I jumped into the car, drove there, did maybe one patient call, then I had to hurry up back so I can begin my lunch break, then eat for 30 minutes and drive back to another patient and drive back. That's an awful lot of driving and wasted time. Eventually, I was confronted about this, and I explained that because I can't afford to eat lunch every day, I just have to eat my own cooking at the office, and that as we don't have the meal benefit, I am practically forced to drive back and forth so that I can have my prescribed by law lunch break. They were dumbfounded at first, but they could not squirm out of it at all. Problem was that the common practice had been for God knows how long, that paramedics and such just went along and paid their own meals as they never knew better. They had always had the possibility to go back to the station to eat, and I'm quite sure that we all were entitled for that meal benefit, since it is prescribed by law and union agreements in a way, that if you can't eat in regular way at the office, you are entitled for the meal benefit instead. But no one had really contested it earlier. So they were dumbfounded and asked me not to do it in the future, but I responded to that if they're going to get the meal benefit running for the department or not. Because if they are not going to do it, I am entitled to eat at the station. The discussion went on a while longer on the subject, but eventually they caved in. They arranged the meal benefit for every nurse and paramedic on the department as they couldn't find a way out otherwise and couldn't have us driving back and forth and not performing our job. Am I the jerk for yelling at my husband after he put me on blast in front of his parents? So I, 39 female, just had spinal surgery. I have some pretty serious restrictions during recovery. The big ones are that I can't lift anything over 10 pounds and I can't bend over for the next month. My husband, he's in his 40s, male, his parents, who are around 70, came across country to help us take care of our kids, who are 4.5 and 10 months, while I'm healing. We don't have any friends or family nearby, and the in-laws are available. My mother-in-law can be really helpful, but she's also really spacey and dismissive of our household rules. Typically, I prefer to have a few days with mother-in-law to show her the ropes before handing things over. And even after initiation, I still find her feeding my son cake for breakfast and letting him use permanent markers over the carpet, so I keep an eye on her. Well, this time I'm not able to do that, so I asked my husband to take off the first few days post-surgery to help me with stuff I need and to ease his mom into working with the kids. I'm also really tired of being the bad guy with mother-in-law and would really prefer it if he could do more of the limit setting. He knows this. Today, day 2 post-op, I'm able to be up a bit more, and each time I find my husband is nowhere to be found while mother-in-law is doing all the work with the baby and the 4-year-old is running wild. Anyway, I went to lay down and rest. I was down for maybe 20 minutes and all I hear is the baby crying. So I get out of bed to see what's up. Mother-in-law is trying to soothe the teething baby by tossing her into the air and yelling "woo" into her face really loudly. And my husband is playing video games in the basement, again. So I go down and tell him that the baby has been crying for a while. I reminded him that he's supposed to be in charge of helping his parents take care of the kids, that he should be upstairs with them. He got upset that I was pulling him away from his video game, and I told him he could do what he wanted after the baby went to bed in an hour. So he comes upstairs. Between when I went down to talk to him and when he came upstairs, mother-in-law gave the baby a teething ring and baby calmed down. My husband turns to me right in front of his mom and says, "Well, it looks like she's calm now." I shoot him dagger eyes, trying to cut him off, but he continued. "And she doesn't seem like she's been crying for half an hour." Now I'm upset. I tell him we need to chat in the bedroom. I lost it. I was yelling at him pretty loudly, asking him why he would put me on the spot like that I was trying to be discreet and had explained to him what I wanted from him while we were alone. I yelled that I was upset because he was taking his anger out on me because I took him away from his video game to care for the baby, and he got petty, making me look like a jerk in front of his mom. That I'm supposed to be in bed, but I'm having to micromanage a husband who thinks he's on vacation now that mom is here to take care of everything. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk, not even a little bit. Your husband is behaving like a kid. He weaponized incompetence and tried to gaslight you into making you believe you're the unreasonable one. You aren't. This is your time for healing and recovery, and he had one job. He failed. He's embarrassed, and it's all your fault now. Sarcasm. Not the jerk. Ship the grandparents home and hire a healthcare aide for you and a nanny for the kids. Tell hubby to go back to work because he's stressing you out. OP. A girl can dream. Heck, send him back to work, them away, and hire a babysitter. Might be a little more work on the front end, but it's far more likely that work pays off in someone following basic reason. Not the jerk. Big red flag. First, he's prioritizing video games over your kid, then proceeds to play the victim and tries to gaslight you into feeling guilty. Take your kid and leave this man. Not the jerk, but almost. You said it yourself. You are micromanaging. No, they won't do things like you would, but everyone will survive. Take care of yourself and let the other adults take care of the kids in whatever way they will. Your husband's mother will get him if she needs him. They both will consult with you when they run out of ideas. When you get back on your feet, you can get back to doing everything your way. Different isn't wrong. I maliciously complied with my boss's absurd demands and got sweet revenge. Background. I work for a company that has a strict dress code policy. We're supposed to wear business formal attire at all times, and that includes wearing a tie. Now, I'm not a big fan of ties. I find them uncomfortable and unnecessary, but I understand that they're part of the dress code, so I wear them anyway. One day, my boss came up to me and told me that he didn't think my tie was appropriate. Apparently, it was a little too flashy for his taste. He demanded that I go home and change it immediately. I was a little taken aback, but I complied. I went home, changed my tie, and came back to work. The next day, my boss came up to me again and said that my new tie wasn't appropriate either. He said it was too plain and that I needed to wear something more interesting. I was starting to get frustrated at this point, but I complied again. I went home, searched through my ties, and found the most obnoxiously loud tie I could find. The following day, I showed up to work wearing the obnoxious tie. My boss looked at me and shook his head, clearly annoyed. He told me it wasn't appropriate either and demanded that I go home and change it again. That's when I decided to engage in some malicious compliance. I went home, changed my tie again, but this time I came back wearing a bow tie. Not just any bow tie, mind you, but a bright pink, sparkly bow tie. I strutted into the office feeling like a boss. My boss's face turned bright red when he saw me. He demanded that I take off the bow tie and put on a regular tie, but I just smiled sweetly and reminded him that he had specifically said that I needed to wear something more interesting. And there was nothing more interesting than a bright pink sparkly bow tie. To make a long story short, my boss eventually gave up and let me wear the bow tie. And you know what? It became kind of a running joke around the office. People started complimenting me on my interesting fashion choices, and my boss just had to grin and bear it. Am I the jerk for telling my parents that my wife and I do not want them renaming our kids? My wife and I welcomed twins in November. We struggled to have kids for a long time, 9 years, and had our twins via IVF. It was a long battle to have our babies, and when we chose their names, it was something we not only took seriously, but poured a lot of love into because we knew they would be the only kids we would name. We chose the first names Ezra and Esme for the twins. Their middle names are more uncommon, so we won't share. But what I will say is part of what went into the choice for these names was the length. Growing up, I had a long last name, 10 letters, and my parents gave me very formal and lengthy first and middle names, Frederick Lawrence, and I always found my name very stuffy and old-fashioned. I go by a nickname derived from my middle name now. I also took my wife's much simpler last name when we got married. So we announced the name of our twins when they were a day old, and when we announced the names, we were aware my parents might not be in love with them. But I stupidly believed the twins being born would be enough of a deterrent for a negative comment. About a week after they were born, my parents asked what kind of names they had and how could we give them such juvenile and incomplete names. I told them they were neither of those things, and they needed to be more careful about how they spoke about their grandchildren's names. I thought they had listened, but then in January, they started calling them Winifred and Douglas. At first, we weren't positive they were talking about the twins, but then we were celebrating my niece's 10th birthday, and my parents directly addressed my daughter as Winifred, and I knew it was them they were talking to. I told them those were not their names. They said those were nicknames they had given them, and everyone has a nickname, that it's not like we gave them names that could lend themselves to nicknames. I said Ezzy and Essie if they really wanted nicknames. They ignored me, and they continued to use the nicknames. So we decided not to be around, because on top of that, they were telling my siblings that the names they had chosen were better for my kids. My siblings thought they were crazy. My parents tried to see the kids a few times since, and I always told them no. They asked why, and I told them they do not get to see our kids if all they can do is insult their names. My parents accused me of trying to control them and said nicknames are a part of life. I told them what they had done wasn't giving a nickname, it was renaming my kids in their own heads, and my wife and I do not want them renaming them. I also said we will not further encourage the use of the nicknames they gave them. My parents said if I had stuck to the family way of naming babies, none of this would be happening, and they said I was being unfair to them. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. What your parents are doing is bizarre. You can't just make up completely different names for people because you don't like them. It's disrespectful to you and confusing for the kids. I wouldn't want to be around them either. Too young to do my job? Okay. Back in my college days in the late 90s, I worked in my college alumni communication center. In reality, it's a call center where college students work to ask the low-giving alumni for money. The college had professional folks to handle the big mega donors. I, luckily, wasn't a student caller, which seemed awful. I, a sophomore, was, and this was the actual job title, data entry. A quick sidebar. We also had a couple of call coaches who were seniors who would monitor the callers and give them feedback on how to do a better job at asking alumni for money. Typically donations in the $100 to $250 range. When callers made a call, they recorded the outcome of the call on a sheet of paper. I would then collect those sheets and then go to the sole computer in the call center and record the data. Most of the results I entered would be no answer or left a message on a voice machine. Sometimes we got a donation. So I would enter that caller outcome into the computer and somewhere else. The alumni department would generate a donation envelope that was mailed to the alumnus, so the alumnus could then mail a check back to us. Now, about 10% of the donations would be by credit card. At the end of the night, after the callers left, I would spend about 30 minutes processing the credit cards through this dial-up credit card machine. I did this without issue for 2 months, September and October. Now enters Karen, the new boss lady over the call center. She finally notices the extra 30 minutes on my timesheet each day and asks me about it sometime in late October. I tell her that I process the credit cards after everyone leaves for the night. That's how I was trained by the previous data entry person. This upsets Karen, who says I'm far too young to be handling credit card information. Makes clear that I am to stick to my job of only entering the caller's data. Period. End of story. Data entry only. No handling the money. The money is to be handled only by the grown-ups. To be perfectly clear, these were credit card numbers handwritten on a sheet of paper. Absolutely no cash money involved on my end. So, you got it, condescending Karen. I stopped processing the credit card donations. I set them in a pile at the end of the night, right by the credit card machine, and with each passing night, the pile grows and grows. November ends, and this pile is now 250 pages or so thick. It also wasn't my job to ask questions like, who's processing the credit card sheets? Since the month ended and no credit cards were processed, Karen absolutely failed to hit her fundraising goals. She starts to berate the call coaches and the callers for not doing a good enough job. Karen starts spending more time in the call center, watching everything and everyone like a hawk. I continue to do exactly what I was told to. One day, she would offer a prize, like a college hat, and then the next, a long lecture about how everyone shouldn't be lazy. Over the course of December, I keep adding to the pile of unprocessed credit cards. It's a good 500 pages thick by now. Compared to the massive piles of sheets of no answer and left a message, it's not very noticeable. Naturally, someone in the alumni department has noticed that the donations coming in are down about 25% over November and December. This results in me coming back from Christmas break, where I get to meet Cool Chad, the new boss dude over the call center. He asks if my job includes processing credit cards. I told him Karen told me not to, but I was trained to process them. In fact, I'm the only one who has been trained on how to process them. He says, cool, please do process the credit cards. Cool Chad asks if there are any unprocessed credit card sheets. Oh yeah, there are. Cool Chad then asks me if I could get this done over the next couple of weeks. Oh sure, no problem. I spent several hours over a couple of Saturdays processing the credit cards. Cool Chad has the absolute best January ever in the history of the call center. The quotes are paraphrasing. It's been over 25 years. Why is Cool Chad Cool Chad? In February, Cool Chad gave me a raise from $8 an hour to $10 an hour. Thanks, Cool Chad.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.